with us today is Paula Groves from Elevate Impact Mendocino. So thank you, Paula, for joining us today too. This meeting usually on these Wednesdays, third Wednesday of the month is just the LEAP meeting, but I thought today's meeting probably also warranted a little more of a general and broader update. So we're going to kind of tackle both topics, so to speak, during today's meeting. Want to make sure everyone knows how to participate in today's meeting. So there is the Q&A chat feature available to participants utilizing the Zoom app. You can access the Q&A chat feature by going to the toolbar, generally found at the top of your screen or the bottom of your screen. And the Q&A chat feature looks like a comic book chat box, so to speak, and it says Q&A. If you just click on that, it's going to pop open a second panel for you that will let you type in your comment or your question. Your comment or question, when you send it, will come to the panelists, which consist of myself, Trish, and Paula will be the only ones that can see your comment or your question. Unless we respond to everyone, right, using the Q&A feature, which in that case, everyone will see both the question and what we responded with. We will be making time available at the end of our really short presentation today for oral questions and to go through the questions in the chat box. So there will be robust amounts of time for suggestions and questions and some responses from the department. In addition, you can not use the chat box if you're on the Zoom app and opt to raise your hand if you prefer to ask your question orally or provide your comment or suggestion orally. In order to get into the queue for oral comments or questions, please do raise your hand. The raise hand feature looks like a hand, sometimes says raise hand, and is also in the toolbar. And if you don't see it in the toolbar, click on the three dots in the toolbar and it will give you more options, including a raise hand feature. If you're not on the Zoom app today and you're calling in and you want to provide oral comment, please do use *9 on your phone to raise your hand or lower your hand. When oral comments happen or occur, we'll be asking you to unmute yourself when it's your turn to speak. And you can mute and unmute your Zoom app if you're utilizing the Zoom app in the toolbar. Again, there's a little microphone feature that says mute. So clicking on that will unmute or mute yourself. And from your phone, you can mute and unmute using *6. Please don't feel like you have to remember these. We will repeat them at the end of today's presentation. Our agenda today is general department updates. We're going to talk about grant processing updates, both LEAP and LJAGP. We're going to talk about some upcoming meeting schedules, and then again, we will have time for a Q&A and some discussion. So, general department update. We are, as many of you know, experiencing a staffing shortage. We are still working towards trying to remedy some of that staffing shortage, even if that includes borrowing staff from other departments where we can in a temporary manner. We do still have contract planning services onboarding. We are actively engaged in onboarding contract planning services so we can prioritize the review of applications, permit applications or renewal applications for issued permits, and also new applications. And we have started assigning some applications for review and making sure that the renewals we have in-house that will be needing to renew their provisional license with the state in July have been assigned. So we are moving those pieces forward according to the staffing schedule that has appeared in the most recent monthly updates to the board. We are working on wrapping up not only this year's budget and looking at the projections towards the end of the year, but also looking at next year's budget. And so these pieces really are priority for the department, is working on the all of the many budgets, right? There's the department budget and there's the grant budgets. And then working on application review, including the onboarding of contract planners. All of this is business as usual, so to speak. And I just want to make sure that that is emphasized, that we are not stopping or stalling or changing processes, even though an item was passed by the Board of Supervisors yesterday that directs the staff to look at streamlining of the cannabis permitting program for cultivation and nursery operations, and to do so in partnership, so to speak, with the Department of Cannabis Control. So we look forward to being engaged in those conversations and to working on next steps, right? So for us, we are making a commitment to make sure that we are providing communications to the public, and that we can have some conversation about progress the department is making in said conversations, and just making sure that what we heard yesterday was a request for robust stakeholder input. And I think some of that could happen through department updates and these types of meetings that we can schedule on a fairly regular basis. A communication did go out today, inviting folks using Canon Notes is how we sent the communication out today. Just before this meeting, inviting folks to participate in another update meeting next Wednesday from 3:30 to 5. So that's March 22nd from 3:30 to 5 p.m. When it comes to grant processing, and it's both grant programs, the Local Equity Entrepreneur Program and the Local Jurisdiction Assistance Grant Program, we are putting grant processing on hold, and I'll talk about some of the reasons why for each program, because they are a bit different, okay? But namely, we really don't have the staff in-house to even take on the processing right now. And with the Local Equity Entrepreneur Program, the eligibility application processing does need some updates. We are opting to use this time to lay some foundation work, which is about all that we can manage. We don't have the bandwidth or the staff available to do both processing timeline or processing policy updates and process these applications at the same time. So there is a hold on the processing of equity eligibility applications because of staffing and needing to do some cleanup work or policy work on that piece specifically. For direct grant programs, we are committed to completing the direct grants that are in Cobblestone in I would say the somewhat immediate future. We are reaching out and looking for some assistance in helping us get folks in Cobblestone completed. And so that is our priority with the Local Equity Entrepreneur Program, frankly, is completing the processing of approved grant agreements that are in the Cobblestone process. So we'll be taking that, that task on first. Our staff person, we just do not have in-house staff right now that is able to work on Cobblestone, which is the platform the county uses to circulate the grant agreements for approval from all of the departments that need to review them and approve them before a check may be issued. So we're seeking some assistance, and we will move those pieces forward, and then we'll move to working on the eligibility criteria. And then we will, as we are available to do it, we will announce when we will go back to direct grant application review. The Local Jurisdiction Assistance Grant Program, we had part of the board item yesterday was a request from the state that we put a pause on executing the direct grant program. So we have paused that program, and we will continue to work with the Department of Cannabis Control to answer questions and see when we might be able to move forward with reviewing and allocating funds for CEQA related mitigation projects. We will keep folks updated. We have updated the pause notices on the website. We have changed the schedule on the website for the local jurisdiction assistance grant program to reflect that we will not be reviewing applications or awarding grants currently, right? We will not be reviewing applications or awarding grants in the months of March and April. If that does change because of work we can conduct with the Department of Cannabis Control to determine the best way to proceed, we will certainly update everyone. And this is part of wanting to have some regularly scheduled meetings with the public so that we can provide those updates in as real time as possible, and also receive suggestions from the public and provide some responses to questions that all of you may have. We did leave the FAQ, or the question and answer response date, up. We will post some responses to the best of our ability to the LJAGP grant program in a timely fashion. I don't think they'll be as robust as if we had the application period open to receive grants and then award them, but we will post some general responses to the best of our ability. And then again, as we have some timeline, we can update the timelines across the board, right, for more robust responses about how to manage applications for LJAGP perhaps, and then also robust responses on next steps and how to move forward and what those communications will continue to look like. So, upcoming meeting schedules. I would really like to encourage all participants to please, if you have not done so already, do sign up for CanaNotes. This slide presentation will be available on the county's website if you go to mendocinocounty.org. And then on the homepage, hover your cursor on the department section, go to Cannabis Department, and you would want to go to the events page. On our events page, not only will you find the slideshow, but as soon as we receive the link back to post that it's been posted to YouTube, this presentation will be on YouTube to view at a later date should you be interested in doing so. Additionally, we'll be posting upcoming meeting schedules on the events page, so it's always a great place to see when the next meeting is, what the agenda might be for that meeting. And sometimes they are broad, so we can talk about lots of topics. So be aware of that, when the meetings are and how to participate in those meetings. So we do post both the call-in information if you prefer to call in, as well as the Zoom link if you prefer the webinar platform. Let's see. With that said, I think I covered the pieces I was hoping to cover in today's brief presentation. I do want to just pause for a moment and see if Paula, if there were any pieces that you had hoped we would cover that you feel like I left out.
No, Kristen, that was very thorough and very thoughtful. Thank you for sharing that information. I just want to say that we do have applications in process with Elevate Impact that are going to be put on hold during this transition period. And if you have any questions about your application, feel free to email us at support@elevateimpactfunds.com. That's support@elevateimpactfunds with an S.com. And we will route your question to the appropriate party and get you an answer within 3 to 5 business days. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Paula. And we might be the appropriate party for some of those responses. So please, we are setting up some auto responses in the county's cannabis grants email addresses. It is really, we're trying to get the information out to people. We are checking those emails and we will be responding. We just want to make sure, using the auto response, make sure that everybody gets the message that we're having a pause and that we're working through some things and that there's going to be some more meetings to come up, okay? So just know when you get an auto response from the application email for LJAGP or from cannabisgrants@mendocinocounty.org, a human will follow up with you probably in the next 6 to 7 days. And but auto responses are a way of making sure we get communications back to all of you. So I think what we can do from here is go to some Q&A and some discussion. So I'll just remind folks how to participate in today's meeting. We've got about a dozen questions in the Q&A feature, so I'm going to go through how to participate. We'll start by working through the Q&A box, and then we'll filter in some oral questions or comments in between what's in the written Q&A box and what folks who have raised their hand. So to participate today, please, the Q&A feature is a great tool. It is located in your toolbar if you're on the Zoom app, and just click the Q&A icon to open up the chat box, and then you can type your question in. If you'd like to make an oral question or comment today, please do raise your hand. This will put you in the queue. And one of our frequent attendees has found that raise hand section. So we've got one person in the queue, and I'm sure more to follow. So the raise hand feature, again, in the toolbar of the Zoom app. If you're not on the Zoom app, you can still make oral comments and get in the queue by using *9 on your phone. When it's your turn to make oral comment, we will ask you to unmute your device, which you can do so using the Zoom app in the toolbar. And if you're calling in, you can unmute your phone using *6. With that said, I am going to go to some questions that are in the Q&A feature. So, of course, I brought up Cobblestone. Someone said, what's Cobblestone? So Cobblestone is a county technology platform that allows us to have document control when we circulate agreements from department to department for internal review and check issuance. And also one of those departments is the auditor's assessor's office, or the auditor's office, which issues checks for these agreements. So I brought it up because some folks attending are in that Cobblestone process, meaning that the department has received a complete grant application from the Elevate Impact team, has approved it. Elevate Impact has provided us a grant agreement, which we then uploaded, and we've started that review process with. So our priority for the Local Equity Entrepreneur Program is to first wrap up the processing of those grant agreements that are in the county's internal review system, AKA Cobblestone. How do you find out if your LEAP grant has made it to Cobblestone? So first of all, if your LEAP grant has not been approved and you have not reviewed an agreement with the Elevate Impact team, I think it's safe to say you're not in Cobblestone, right? If you've done that work already, then you may be in Cobblestone, and you can email cannabisgrants@mendocinocounty.org. Make sure that you provide us with the correct name of who is going to be on that agreement. So if your agreement, say, I'm the awardee, but I wanted my check cut in my business name is what's going to show, or what I would need to know as an county employee, a department employee. It's what I would enter in. It's the easiest way for me to search for your agreement to help you help relay the message to you as the awardee where your agreement is in the Cobblestone process, or if it's in the Cobblestone process. Okay, so make sure you email that question to cannabisgrants@mendocinocounty.org, and you make sure you let us know what the name is on that agreement and whether or not it's in a business entity, and if it is, what that business entity's name is as well, please. Grant agreements that are in the budget approval stage but haven't been issued a grant agreement yet are on pause. We'll pick those up where we left off, but we have to prioritize working through some other pieces first because of our short staffing situation. What is the dollar amount of equity grants currently in Cobblestone, and what is the deadline to spend down the remaining funds, and what happens if the funds are not spent down in time? So I'm going to break those apart, and I'm going to repeat them as I answer them. The dollar amount of equity grants currently in Cobblestone has not changed since our last presentation. So if you look at the best place to look at that, and I'm going to say it's a little over $800,000, but if you open up the report that we submitted to the General Government Committee last month, you could easily go to the GGC meeting, go to Mendocino County org, and instead of when you hover on the department's cursor, go to Board of Supervisors, and then look up February's General Government Committee meeting. There is grant reporting that shows how much grant funding has been issued, right? Whether it's during the waiver program or in direct grants, how much is encumbered as the number or the dollar amount of grant processing that's in Cobblestone to be completed. And then there's the remaining balance of what we have to spend down, right? That spend down deadline is October. We do anticipate not taking a long break, but I think we do need probably 60 days before we can really pick this up and usher it forward. We got to get some things off our plate here. And if funds are not spent down by the end of October, I suspect, but I don't know yet, but I suspect that there's an opportunity for an extension. And I suspect that because previously with the grant awards that we've received, rounds 1 and round 2, there was opportunity for extension. Are LEAP fee waivers being paused? At this point, those are a little easier to process. We're already staffing the processing of the fee waivers. We have talked about pausing them, but we have not paused them currently. And we're also, as we're coming on to tax season, have some concerns about pausing them. So if folks have suggestions or comments on that, we would love to hear your suggestions and your thoughts. Why did the state ask us to pause the local jurisdiction assistance grant program? And I added the LJAGP component because that is the one the state requested that we pause. You know, I think we're getting ready to work together as a team to figure out how to best usher these applications through to the finish line so they are eligible for annual licensure. And in doing so, the state is very supportive of grant funding being available to folks who need it to help assist them with meeting their CEQA requirements. Excuse me, I've been talking all day, so my talkers are all tired. But I think there's a lot for us to work through about how to best accomplish our mutual goals of ensuring that folks can achieve their annual licenses. And so I believe this is why they asked us to pause the review and award of the LJAGP Direct Grant Program, is so we can develop a plan together. We did receive scoring details from GoBiz on the round 4 equity grant application. We would love to share those with the public in a meeting. We did circulate those to the Board of Supervisors. We thought about having that discussion today, frankly, and felt like it was probably too much and that these were some pressing issues that we should discuss beforehand. But yes, we would welcome a public meeting on those materials. I would like to schedule that for a future date, not today, but let's see. When you were asked from the BOS to get help with the LJAGP, why did you turn down the help? I don't know that we were asked for help from and turned down help from the LJAGP. I know at one point in time there was some conversation about whether or not it made sense to do a contract administration program similar to what we did with LEAP. Part of what's been hard with LEAP is the capital improvement components and how they tie into the permitting and application review that the department conducts. The LJAGP program really was going to need planners to review those applications and planners that are familiar with the applications we have on hand. It would have also required a request for proposal process, which would have delayed the ability for us to even consider applications out several months, if not a year or more. That is a lengthy process. It takes resources, financial resources, and plenty of staff time, both in putting together the RFP, reviewing the RFP, and then executing a contract with someone to take on the work. So we were really concerned about timelines. We wanted to meet at least this work season's timeline. So I think that this is what the question is asking about. I may not have responded fully, I apologize, but that is my recollection of the conversation about help was around contract administration services. So yeah, there is a question about the e-notification system that we used called CanaNotes. And the question is whether or not that is posted to the department's website. And the answer is yes. So you can go to mendocinocounty.org, cover the cursor on the department tab at the top, click on the cannabis department. And then in the left-hand side of your screen, when you land on the cannabis department's page, you'll notice that there's a green bar with white letterhead or white click-through tabs as well. And one of them is e-notifications. You can click through there right from our website or in the department's page and go to the e-notification system to sign up for CanaNotes. And I agree, it is surprising how many people don't get CanaNotes. It's a good source of information, we believe. Are you hiring more staff specifically to assist with LEAP grant processing? We are still interviewing. We have a number of recruitments that have gone out. Some of them are still active. We plan on following through with interviewing for those recruitments and placement where we can. So the hope is to have some more staff available to the department so we can wrap up these projects, yes. What would be the best case scenario timeline for incorporating stakeholder input and revising the components of the equity program that GoBiz wants to see addressed per their scoring material? It's a great question. I think we should work through that together. I don't think we'll be able to be prepared to have that conversation in a thoughtful manner by next week, right? We do have a meeting next week. I really want to focus on seeing if we can get some updates to all of you next week. But perhaps right in the beginning of April, we could work through some of that. I think that would have to be a meeting all on its own. So I do need a little time with that document to help shape a conversation and hold space for it. So not next week, but I would expect it soon. It's 4:03. Excuse me. We do have a caller now too, who have had, one of them has had their hand raised most of the meeting. So I do want to do, as I mentioned, I want to filter in some oral comments and questions. Our first caller today will be Paul Hansberry, followed by Hannah Nelson and then Tamara Kislak. And I am going to put a timer up, so please just bear with me a moment. I go ahead and work through this. And I'm going to get a drink of water. All right. Paul Hansberry and possibly Susan Tibbin. You should be able to unmute your device and please start your comment.
Hi, yeah, that sounds like things are in a state of flux right now with all the different pauses. But I was curious about Cobblestone. You said that you're going to be focusing on that. But once things go into Cobblestone, isn't it up to the whims and of the different departments, what can the department actually do once it puts it into Cobblestone? I thought that was at the whim of the auditor or county council or risk management or one of the other departments. What can the department do to accelerate that stuff to get it through Cobblestone? Number one. Number two, you said that with your automated responses that eventually there would be a human that would get back to you. Will the human get back with a phone call or at least a request or a time for a Zoom meeting, or is it just going to be another digital response that was generated by a human instead of a robot? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. Great questions. So, so Cobblestone, we ran into, we've had a delay in Cobblestone for quite some time now because there was the unit in the county, there's a policy update to how contracts or agreements should be formatted in Cobblestone, and then we had a number, the $800,000 and odd worth of contracts in Cobblestone. They all needed to be updated. So we just received the updated template last week. It has taken some time for the contracting unit to go through that policy update and then finalize it and provide a template. So now we are in the process of finding some assistance to get those contracts that are, or agreements that are in Cobblestone updated so that they can move past the last couple phases of review. So that's where we are. We had some things that were stalled out waiting on that template, and then it came in last week. So that's what we'll be focusing on in Cobblestone, is specifically updating those agreements to meet the updated policy so that they can move forward. Automated responses really is just an information so folks know that the grant programs are on hold. We just want to make sure that that message is getting out there. And we don't have the ability to staff individual Zoom meetings, but one of the things that I think we should do, and Trish, would you be so kind as to take a note? In that automated response, I think it would be really helpful for us to add the Cananote link so folks know that they should sign up for Cananote so they know when we'll be meeting on these topics, because that is the main way that we notify the public that we have meetings coming up. And so we will be we will add that to the response, and then we will email back to respond to your questions directly, but we won't be able to set up individual one-on-one Zoom meetings to walk through stuff. We can't guarantee that we'll have the time available to do that. Okay, let's see here. Our next speaker is going to be Hannah Nelson, followed by Tamara Kislak, and then Perry. So let's reset this. Hannah, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device and start your question or your comment.
Thanks, Kristen. I have 4 questions, and thanks for having this meeting. Can you talk about the policy updates to the verification process? You can ignore, I wrote a question in and I used DCC, but I realize it's GoBiz, not DCC. Whether the eligibility changes are in keeping with the current GoBiz solicitation that was previously issued by them, or if it only relates to future solicitations. And then when will the county reapply for round 4 funding? Was Cobblestone updated template for all county contracts or just the LEAP contracts? And then are there currently funds available in a process for Elevate Impact to continue to work through budget templates and other portions of work that they've been handling that they can do aside from the updates that need to be done to verification processes or stuff like that? Thank you.
All right, thanks for those questions. Okay, let's see here. Little administrative tasks, sorry. Policy verification processes. So, you know, it is what we're working on with policy verification processes for eligibility specifically are just to ensure that we have processes in place that help us meet those benchmarks that were identified as being low scores, right, in the materials we got back from GoBiz. So we want to go through that document, we want to evaluate it, and then we have to figure out how to create a policy and a procedure that ties back our issuance of equity eligibility to a direct impact, right? So I'm not convinced right now that we need to change the criteria that's expressed in the program manual. I am convinced that we need to change or clarify what's expected of that criteria so that we can gather data to show that the individuals we're working with in the equity program were directly impacted by the war on drugs, right? This data collection is really an important statutory component of the local jurisdiction equity funding or grant funding programs. So I want to make sure that we get those pieces in place so we can be eligible for round 4 funding, right? I think without being able to explain in a round 4 application how we're going to ensure this and how we're going to provide data back to the state for their report about who we're helping, right? Like what that demographic looks like, how they were directly impacted. We're not going to be eligible for that round 4 funding. And I do expect the next round of solicitation opportunity to be available in the fall, as was this past one. So I'm thinking October-ish, November-ish. Because this round of spend down is supposed to be spent down in October, we're probably looking more like November on a solicitation round. But again, we don't always know when until we get much closer to the date, but I would think probably in the fall around Q4 of this calendar year. Contract updates. The contract updates are for all contracts. This is not a local equity entrepreneur grant agreement specific update. It is countywide template update for contracts and really just ensures that when the reviewer is reviewing agreements that have multiple components that are broken into multiple attachments, that there's a way to keep a consecutive flow, page numbering, headers, footers, identifications, so on and so forth. That is on our team to do. And because we knew that that update was coming on, we included some of these, please don't page number your supplemental materials documents, for example, right? We put these instructions into the LJAGP because we knew that we were going to be faced with needing to do our own numbering sequence that starts page 1 of the agreement and goes all the way through all of the attachments that might be associated with that agreement, right? So that work of taking the agreements that are in Cobblestone right now down, getting them into the new template and getting them re-uploaded is what we need to do. But I do want to say this about the timeline of doing that. Once they go back up into Cobblestone with all of the page numbering fixed, they go right back to where they were in the review line. They don't start back over at the beginning. So I believe most, if not all, of our agreements right now that are encumbered funds, so everything that's in Cobblestone is in contracting. So we just need to do these template updates and then they'll move forward. They're almost to the end. So that's good news there. Elevate impact funds, and we've been looking at the budget and looking at our invoices, and we have based on the latest invoices, spent down the administrative funds that were set aside for the 3 rounds of grant funding that we currently have the 3rd round to spend down. So there are no additional administrative funds available at this time to keep the Elevate Impact team moving forward. So we are working on division of labor internally and the transfer of information. Okay, I think we got all of those pieces. We're going to go to okay, so I'm going to eliminate your question now. I'm just gonna, Hannah, say that I answered it live. So if I didn't, you can type any portions of it back into the Q&A. And then I want to go to Tamara Kislak, Tom Perry, and then Mendo. So let's see here. Tamara, you should be able to unmute your device and we've got you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I got a lot of background noise. Sorry about that. I'm trying to see everything from your point of view. I know you got a lot of red tape to move through. I always just come on here to try and give you my point of view. Last time we met, I told you how we'd been used as target practice by the DEA and held at gunpoint, and it's hard not to feel like this program is just a continuation of harassment, because we've spent so much time and energy trying to get this money in, trying to get the stuff that is really a lifeline that we need. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I just want to know. I want to know what we can do, what you can do. Can you give me something that we can help go to the Board of Supervisors? Is there something that we can do to make this go smoother? Because this is painful, demoralizing, and humiliating. So I'm asking you, is there something we can do to streamline this? Is there some way to get people more information so that this isn't just another drag on people that have already been hurt by the war on drugs? Thanks.
Thank you for that, Tamara. And it's a fair question, right? So thank you for asking it and asking it kindly. There's no intention to do harm here. We have some tough deadlines to meet. We've got a lot of work on our plate, and we have very few staff persons. I think we can hope for, right, the ability to hire more staff persons, right? There's a couple key hires that would help us be able to navigate some of this. And it's going to be a team effort to find the funds to make sure that we can do those hires, right? So some of this has to do with the budget process. It has to do with what, the outcome is of LJAGP funds. And not that we can use LJAGP funds to fund the review of LEAP applications specifically. I am going to ask the question. So I think, it's going to take a little time, a little teamwork, but committed to asking the conversations and seeing how we get there. And I think if there's help that the public wants to bring, I would encourage asking the questions and how we can get more resources and staffing so the department can potentially proceed, right? And again, I think your question's a very fair question, and I think you can ask it at the next meeting too. We're going to provide updates. These conversations are going to be ongoing. Okay. I do want to acknowledge the fact that there are 24 open questions in the Q&A. We've got 2 hands up. It's 4:19. I do feel like we should take comments from Tom Perry and then Mendo, and then go back to the Q&A for a little bit so we can work through everyone's questions to the best of our ability. But please, you can still raise your hand, but we are going to do Tom Perry followed by Mendo and then go to the Q&A feature for a little bit. So Tom, you should be able to unmute your device and get started.
All right, thank you, Kristen. My first question is, how should we go through the editing process while in Cobblestone? Personally, I've been trying to do this for 2 applications with Elevate, but it just seems like they're understaffed. My point person has been on auto reply for like a month. And it's just incredibly difficult to get a response, a timely response, especially when, that goes, like I get comments from you, Kristen, and then it goes through Elevate and we're going back and forth and, redoing some things. Secondly, can we get confirmation that, how do we get confirmation that we're still in Cobblestone? Because I worry that, we either got kicked out or sent to the back of the line. That's the second question. And I apologize for the third question. I mean, it just seems like, we've got a resource problem. This is more of a comment. You got a resource problem because the county has made this process so difficult to navigate. We've spent, hundreds of hours now on a grant that it should not take that long for all of us to, to push through. And, personally, I know that we've been stuck at county council, for like 4 months. We redid our stuff and we're stuck for 2 months again. It just seems like the county in general, and I might be targeting council, but they've made the process so difficult that there's no other alternative but to go over budget, trying to process these things. That's it for me.
Okay, I'm happy to respond to those questions. And I'm gonna leave you with permission to talk, Thomas, because I may have questions for you. So you are still in Cobblestone. I think I think what we're going to need to do is get the materials that need to be edited for your agreement from you. I can work with Paula. Actually, I'll work with Paula to get the latest update from her. But you don't start over at the beginning. You start over where you're at, which is at county council. So I think we're close with you, and we can do the formatting and the last update all in one fell swoop, and get you moving forward. We do have a resource problem. I think the resource problem is challenging because we've seen a lot of transition, right? And I'm not talking about since I've been here. The programs as a whole, the development of everything from an application review process and issuance process to a grant review process and issuance process. The starting and the execution of those programs, lots of leadership changes, lots of ordinance changes, lots of going back to the boards and stopping and going again. And unfortunately, we find ourselves in the awkward position of building a program, building a plane while we're flying it, which makes execution bumpy, to say the least. I don't advise it, but it is what we picked up and had to usher through, and there was a sense of urgency, and we tried to do that to the best of our ability and avoid some of these bumps. But you don't know what you don't know until someone points out that you don't know how to proceed with something. And I sincerely apologize for that being the case here. Trish, you put like a 30-minute block on my calendar this week to wrap up this grant agreement in Cobblestone. It has been a really long time. I'm going to go on to Mendo, and then I'm going to go on to what's in the Q&A feature. And Mr. Perry, I am going to just click that I answered your question live. So please, if I fail to answer some portion of it, feel free to type a question back into the chat feature. Alrighty. We're going on to Mendo. You should be able to unmute your device. There you go. I see your device. And if you unmute, okay, we got you, I think.
Hi, it sounds like you're definitely having a hard go of it. I'm hoping that you can answer if I applied for the direct grant in January. We applied before the 7th, we got the direct grant in, and I'm not quite sure if we were never assigned an underwriter. We were also never put into Cobblestone. So does that mean that when you turn it back on, we will have to reapply and do all of that work again?
Right. You can continue to ask questions if you have them, Mendo. You have some time and I'm writing them down. I will respond to your question though. I don't know if you have more.
Okay. That was pretty much it. And then the other thing is now the LJAGP has been put on hold. So does that mean that we have now, because I haven't gotten it all completely in because you gave us an extension on the deadline. So does that mean that deadline no longer applies and that we will be hearing from you at a later date as to when we need to have it in, or do we still need to have it in by the deadline on the LJAGP?
Great questions. Okay, let's knock those out. Okay, so if you applied for a LEAP grant and or you applied for LEAP eligibility, those applications and those materials are gathered and secured, and they have some timestamps on them. We will be picking those up when we have the capacity to review those materials in the order they were received, and we will work through them. Our goal is to spend down this round of funds so that we can hopefully apply for funds in the future. In regards to the LJAGP deadline, we did scrub the deadlines from the website. We did not go back to the manual and scrub them out of the manual. But the applicable deadlines for application submission have been changed to, on the website specifically, to be determined. So there is no need to submit your LJAGP grant to the department within the time frame that had been previously posted. We will follow up with putting an FAQ up along the timeline that is posted. We have left that timeline up. We did put a hold notice on the main page of the website as well as on the cannabis grants page. And we do really encourage everyone to sign up for CanaNotes. So as we work through the processes, the future processes with the Department of Cannabis Control, we have the ability to help keep the public informed about what the next steps look like and processes the department is making. Or progress, I should say. Lots of processes, but they result in progress, hopefully. So I don't know when, what, or how on LJAGP, and I apologize. But I do know that we're committed to continuing to communicate. And so please do sign up for CanaNotes. Please do watch that cannabis events page so that you can know how to get the information from us and be engaged, because we do appreciate your feedback. Okay, a reminder, folks who are calling in can raise their hand if you want to make oral comments or ask a question by using *9 on your touchpad phone. There is a raise hand feature for those of you on the Zoom app. If you'd like to make oral comments or ask a question, you can do so by raising your hand to get into the queue. I'm going to go back to you, Mendo, for just a moment and see if I missed one of your questions, and then I am going to the Q&A feature. So Mendo, did I miss one of your questions?
No, I didn't completely finish it. My question was so at this point with the LJAGP and with the direct grants, I know that Mendocino County received the funds for the direct grants and you're working on getting that spent down. The LJAGP, Mendocino County also received the funds for that grant, correct?
Can you ask all of your questions so I can respond in one fell swoop, please?
Okay, did Mendocino County receive the funds for the LGAGP grant, or are they still waiting to receive those funds from the company?
Okay. So how the funds work for the LGAGP is that we were awarded an amount of about $17.5 million for a multitude of projects that include staffing the department, contract planners, indirect staff support in relationship to executing the LGAGP grant, and then a category that's called other and is referred to as indirect administrative services. That indirect administrative services portion of the LGAGP budget still includes $10 million. To date, the department has spent down approximately $455,000, and that's it out of the funds. So we technically have not spent down any of the monies that were set aside for direct grant awards, but those are on hold at the request of the Department of Cannabis Control. And we'll be discussing with them how and when to perhaps release those funds to eligible applicants. But again, we're holding them at their request so we can work through some processes with them. Okay, I have a little administrative work to do here, just housekeeping. Give me just a moment. Okay, so going back to questions in the Q&A feature. I'm going to put this up. Give me just a minute. I think putting this slide up might be helpful for folks who might want to participate and might not know how. Okay, so going through some more questions in the Q&A feature until perhaps we have someone else raise their hand. So we've got a note here that we've got an approved grant that folks are hoping that the applicant is hoping that we will take a look at and see if it's in Cobblestone. We will do our best to, as we do the transfer of files, to really assess where everyone's at and make sure that we put a timeline in place for getting back to materials. I don't have grant numbers in front of me today, but I think we can provide an update next week at our meeting about how many grant applications have been approved but may not have been entered into Cobblestone. We can try to get that information available for next meeting. And I'm making a note, so bear with me. Okay. And why did we pause reviewing the LEAP equity eligibility application? Any idea when you'll resume? We do have some work to do. So again, getting some policies and procedures in place that ensure that we are capturing the data to show the state that those who are deemed equity eligible were directly impacted by the war on drugs is really hugely important, especially if we're going to apply for grant funds in the future. It's critical. So we are pausing the reviewing of the equity eligibility application so that we can get those policies and procedures in place. It's going to take us a little time. We are in a staffing shortage right now. And so we will be picking that component up after we move to Cobblestone. And hopefully we'll have some additional information for folks next week. The status on my Elevate Impact grant says submitted to underwriting. So I believe that that means that you've gotten your materials turned into the portal and it was awaiting an Elevate assignment. So we will get that information with that same status to work through grant agreements in the order they were received, so we can process them in the same sort of order they would have been processed in the Elevate Impact by the Elevate Impact team. I cannot necessarily provide a rough timeline for the pause on the LEAP grant program because it is dependent to either borrowed staff or hired staff, right? So we're working through to see what sort of resources we can come up with for assistance to move these forward. And again, we will be having some regular meetings. Please do sign up for Cananotes so we can update you on these important questions. We are hoping that the county will meet the performance requirements to spend on the funds by October. I think that that's a reasonable timeline. I think we can get to that. And I think that history has shown that when we set the time aside to work through those materials, we can get that done. And the MCD post cannabis reports that were submitted to the GGC to the website, and let operators know via Cananote when they are posted. We are so incredibly staff shortage, so we would have to create a web page to put those notes up. But I think what we could do is just send them out with the Cananote that's like as an attachment with the Cananote that we send around that time of issuing it. But I don't want to commit right now to developing new websites, new web pages. So, but I think we could send them as an attachment to that Cananote, or the Cananote that we send closest to that timeline. Can a cultivation permit holder apply for a staff position with the MCD since the department is so understaffed? And are there part-time positions available? So a cultivation permit holder, I do believe can fill a position, but again, this is an HR question and there would be some conflict of interest and disclosure components that would have to be taken care of. All applications, so all parties that are interested in applying to the cannabis department, we do encourage you to still apply. There, you would have to go to mendocinocounty.org, hover your cursor on the departments tab, and then click on the HR tab. So all applications that come in must come through an HR job posting. HR is short for human resources. Sorry about the acronym. And so you have to apply through the human resources job posting. The jobs posting can be found by going to the human resources page. You'll click through to job opportunities, then you got to click through to job opportunities again, I believe. A lot of our positions are the same positions that other departments use. So the postings are unlikely to specifically note the cannabis department. So if you were perhaps interested in providing your services as an administrative assistant to the cannabis department, or a department analyst to the cannabis department, or a planner to the cannabis department, right? There's lots of positions that are open. You would want to apply as an administrative assistant to the county and really specifically look at the location. Does it say Ukiah only? Does it say Ukiah and Fort Bragg only? Does it say Fort Bragg only? Does it say Willits only? We're Willits, right? So I think the posting says Willits, right? We can get that list, but we also can get the list, say, for Ukiah job postings as well. So what I mean by the list is human resources will put a position opening up. They will often put a timeline on that list. People can apply for said position, and then when the list closes, departments such as the cannabis department can request a list of candidates that human resources has deemed qualified for administrative assistant position, if that's what we asked for, or the planner position that we are offering that we asked for the list for. And then we work with that list to conduct interviews. So kind of a long-winded explanation there. We have used part-time help before, which is listed generally as extra help positions. So you could search, there is a search feature when you go into HR and then into the job opportunities section. You can look for extra help, there's a search item, and then you would want to fill in an extra help application. Unless you fill in an extra help application, we don't have the ability to consider someone for a part-time position, which is frankly probably a good consideration to see if we can get some just gentle pushing on moving some pieces forward. So I hope that answers your questions. We have a couple of new hands in the queue. I want to make sure we get to folks who haven't had an opportunity to provide oral comment. We do have plenty of questions in the Q&A feature. I don't think we'll get to all of those this week, but we will be back next week, same place, same time, right? And the Canon note did go out today, but we'll also have next week's meeting posted to our events page, so you can find how to join that meeting there. Let's see here. Let's go back to our trustee timer. We're going to hear from 3 people. Okay, guys, I'm hoping we can get through everyone. I do want to respond, but we're going to commit to hearing from Nira, followed by Heidi Wordhouse, and then Michael Katz. I don't know if we'll get very far beyond that because responding to the questions takes a little bit of time. So, Nira, you should be able to unmute your device and ask your question or make your comment, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. I would like to keep it simple and sweet. If you are in the LEAP portal process and in the process of getting your bids and documents together to the satisfaction of the portal, will we be able to move forward to the Cobblestone and receive our grants? Or would you say at this time that if you are in the LEAP portal and you have not been approved for Cobblestone, you're not likely to move forward?
Is that is that your only question, Anira?
Yes. And then it's 2 parts. My second part is, are you available or someone on the staff to help answer some of the questions regarding the application's goals? Because I've been waiting for answers since January.
Okay. All right. I can answer both those questions for you. Your little administrative functioning here. Okay. So if you are still in the LEAP portal process, you are not in the Cobblestone process, and you're in hold in that status until we can start reviewing the grant applications again. Right? It doesn't mean that you won't be reviewed, but I cannot tell you when we'll be picking up those reviews. We are working with Elevate Impact team to get document transfer and information transfer so that we can assess the staffing needs and where we go in next steps of grant application review. Currently, I do not have your applications in-house, so I cannot answer questions. Responding in a detailed manner to the specifics of an application is not an opportunity today. It is certainly something we'd be happy to update folks on next week and see if we have more information about when we may be able to have access and make sure that staff is available to answer more in-depth and customized or personalized questions. Our next speaker is going to be Heidi Wordhouse. You should be able to start your question or your comment, and then we'll go to Michael Katz after you. Heidi?
First of all, thank you so much for updating us on the LJAGP abeyance or being put on hold for a little while. While it might not be the news we were all hoping for, at least we can let go of it at this point and concentrate on other issues. But primarily, I have a question about qualifying for equity. I'm trying to help another farmer through their equity qualification program and was given to understand that the 5-mile camp criteria is being changed to a personal affidavit of the war on drugs impact on your own personal life. So has that change already occurred? And if it has, what are you specifically looking for in that affidavit? And I'll take my answer. Thank you.
All right, thank you for those questions. So really, this is the work that we need to do. So I earlier mentioned that I wasn't convinced that we needed to change the criteria, but I am convinced based on the response from the state that we need to wrap data collection and policies such as an affidavit around some of the broader criteria, including the 5-mile radius of a camp rate, so that we have the ability to verify with the state that we are creating or issuing eligibility to people who were directly impacted. So I, again, there's no commitment to eliminate the 5-mile radius. It's a consideration. We have to do the work first. And I think the place we start with doing that work is assessing the criteria we have, and can we wrap data collection procedures and policies around each of those criteria that aren't an arrest or a conviction to ensure that we're showing direct impacts. So we will keep you updated, but this is also part of the reason why I don't want to proceed with moving eligibility applications forward, because I think now that we have the information, we should put these practices in place so we ensure that we're issuing appropriately and not creating more confusion, so to speak, down the road. All right, doing good on time. We're going to go to Michael Katz. Michael, I think, let's see. I don't think, wait a minute.
Yes, I think
Okay,
I'm good.
Yep, okay, I got you, Michael. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for this meeting. Really appreciate all the information. Definitely support the affidavit idea and look forward to working more on how we can get that whole process moving again once we identify how to address the concerns from GoBiz. I also wanted to just confirm if, as it sounded like you mentioned to Tom earlier, that if there are folks who are in Cobblestone who still need to submit additional materials, that is a possibility and that's something that could be worked on. I wonder if you could just provide that details about how folks would manage that. And then finally, I just thought it would be important to mention, in light of the tax items that were discussed earlier and the fact that the fee and tax waiver program is actually still operational, and that with the tax payment plan that was passed yesterday for folks who have been deprioritized, that folks could now be able to utilize those funds in that program towards the remaining tax bills towards the payment plan. And so just wanted that to be, I guess, announced and shared with people, so and maybe through Canon Notes that could also, people could be made aware that, you know, for equity, people who have been designated equity already, this is a pathway for that payment as well as the true ups that are coming up.
And Michael, not to put you on the spot, but does MCA support us keeping that waiver program open?
You know, I haven't talked to the policy committee about it, but if I had to guess, I would say absolutely people are in need of access to these funds. And I would be surprised if we felt that that would not be a good idea.
Okay. And sorry to put you on the spot. We've had a lot of internal kicking it around. And so thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think any access to these funds that people would not otherwise have to enable them to take care of costs, especially since 2022 was not able to be included in the tax reforms, people are going to still need that boost over the edge. So I would expect a lot of people to take advantage of that if it were available still. So hopefully it will be.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Any further? Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and try to respond, and we've got a little more time. So I'd like to go back to the Q&A feature, and we do have one more hand raised. So I think we have been working on an affidavit. The Elevate Impact team put together a nice affidavit. I think it really warrants a robust conversation with the public, stakeholders, a great time to talk about the affidavit and how we may perhaps create a more robust review process, so to speak, right? And tracking process to ensure that the equity eligibility is being provided to those directly impacted by the war on drugs. Conversation I would welcome to have together, right, in one of the upcoming meetings. And I think the great time to do that is when we go through the responses from the state. You know, there's a few things going on with agreements that are in Cobblestone. There's a couple folks who may be in similar situations to Mr. Perry, where we've been working through corrections for months in Cobblestone, right? And we're like right there in getting them wrapped up, and we can do the formatting of those pieces all together. As I mentioned earlier, for those of you who are in Cobblestone, just please do email cannabisgrants@mendocinocounty.org. Again, that's cannabisgrants@mendocinocounty.org. Make sure you identify clearly the name on that agreement, whether it's your person or your person and your entity, or your entity. We need to know how to search for that agreement so that we can find it in Cobblestone, so that we can assess where it's at, and we can work with you to get it through to the award stage. The other thing that Michael's question brought up for me, we didn't talk about, is there's a number of awardees out there that we need to follow up with regarding modifications. That is also a priority on our list. We consider those folks in Cobblestone too, right? Because they've been awarded, they've gone through the process. We know we have some modifications from folks. Again, some of how we move forward with those pieces is going to be timed based on transfer of information between Elevate to the department. And we're committed to working on that, but we're short-staffed, so we are more than happy to provide an update again next week. Okay. I think I got those questions and responses. Let's see, where are we going here with this? Okay. I did say I'd let at least one more person speak again. So I've got Paul Hansberry's hand is raised. Hannah Nelson's hand is raised. I think if we go to the next two speakers at 4:52, it's highly likely that the meeting will end at the end of our next two speakers. So I do want to make sure we get staff out of the office in a timely manner and not ask them to stay over. So we can't do this without Trish, and we want her to be able to go home at 5. So I'm going to go to Paul and then Hannah. I'm going to ask both of you to please do keep it brief. I would like to do my best to try to respond to your questions. So Paul, you should be able to go ahead and start your question or comment.
Hi, everybody. This is Susan. Hi, Chris. That's okay. Thanks for doing this meeting, Kristen. Do existing approved equity applicants have to reapply? Because in as much as it's virtually impossible to get many of the records for various reasons, and we certainly can't do requests for records, doesn't work that way. Do those people need to reapply, do the affidavit and go an extra step, or will they be grandfathered in? Thanks, Kristen.
Yeah, thanks for that. So it's a great question. I did not discuss this earlier, but I want to reiterate what we've said in previous meetings. If we already deemed you equity eligible, we are not going to ask you to reapply, right? If you're in the queue and you've submitted materials, when we go back to equity eligibility applications and we need more materials, we'll ask for more materials. If you've been through the process of equity eligibility and your application is mostly reviewed and you haven't filled out the affidavit and we feel like an affidavit is needed, we'll pick it up and we'll ask for the affidavit. So I hope that gets to the heart of your question, Susan. I am going to go on to Hannah Nelson so we can try to give everybody an opportunity to ask their last question. Hannah?
Hey, thanks. Real quick, if people, Elevate Impact did a really great job of reaching out to people before the last LEAP deadline for direct grants. And so they were really encouraging people, just get your application in, and even if it needs to be perfected later. And so the question is, now is later, and they've perhaps gathered additional documents. Should they be uploading that stuff to their application? Should they be waiting? We just don't want to have them rejected once you unpause. So what is the best way for those people to perfect the applications that were in the pipeline? They're not in Cobblestone, so it's not about being eligible to keep going. And then back to the other question about the change in eligibility. It's really important that we look at the solicitation and see whether or not the GoBiz solicitation requirements are applicable to the current applicants, or whether it would be for future round funding. So we don't need to answer anything, just mentioning that, and we can talk about it at the next meeting.
Great, thank you for that. So I think when we talk about the scoring, we did get a really robust response from the state, and we'll talk about the scoring together. It'll help to inform the questions about change in eligibility, what we can expect from the next solicitation, and what their expectations are, I think, of local jurisdictions to provide data and ensure that there's a direct impact. It really felt like their responses help clarify that quite a bit. They don't say do A, B, C, and D, but they do say X, Y, and Z is not adequate. So it's up to us to figure out how to make those components of the eligibility criteria adequate and hopefully beyond adequate, so we can have really great scores going forward. I'm glad to hear that Elevate Impact did a really good job reaching out. Thank you for letting us know. We really enjoy working with the Elevate Impact team. They've been great to work with. I want to defer the question about what to do about uploads to the next meeting. I want to make sure that I have some time to check in with Paula. I am not an expert on the portal, and I just think it would be helpful if I can have some discussions with the Elevate Impact team and then respond in a thoughtful manner that makes sure that we aren't asking people to do work that's unnecessary. I want to reiterate that we do not have intention of asking people to reapply or start over from the beginning. But in order to answer your question, Hannah, in a thoughtful manner, I do need to check in with the Elevate Impact team. So I'm highlighting this, and we'll bring it back to our next meeting. Michael Katz, you have a question in the Q&A feature that I think I responded to. I'm going to go ahead and say that I responded to it, and if for some reason it's still open, please bring it back in the next meeting. We've talked a number of times about why direct grants are being paused. The LEAP grants are being paused. Really, it is a staffing and resource issue. We have to pick our battles wisely right now, so to speak. And we need to focus on working on getting the eligibility components cleaned up. We have to eat the elephant one bite at a time. And so we're going to work on getting eligibility pieces cleaned up so we can process those applications. We have to focus on what's in Cobblestone and getting that ushered through. I can't say how long it's going to be. That's really a staffing and a resource related question. Timelines are, but we are going to keep you updated. We do again request that all of you sign up for CanaNotes. If you have not done it, you can sign up right on the Cannabis Department's webpage. LJAGP direct grants are paused based on direction from the board at a request from the Department of Cannabis Control. We are at 4:59. We've had great attendance today. I want to thank all of you for joining us. just a reminder, we'll be meeting same place, same time next week to have some more updates. You can find the information to join us at next Wednesday, the 22nd meeting from 3:30 to 5 on our website on our events page. This meeting is streamed. It will be posted. Please do feel free to pull the link off of the events page for this meeting and listen to it, ask more questions, and join us for future meetings. I want to thank both Trish and Paula for joining us and helping us make this meeting possible today, and all of the attendees. And we'll talk to you all soon. We're going to go ahead and adjourn.